Here's March. This is what you can think of. What would you say it is?
Well, I mean, I think in general, Pisces season is just kind of an expansion of lunacy. I mean, things just seem to like, like after Capricorn and Aquarius, then things hit Pisces, and like things just seem to like unwind. Like there's no boundaries or structure to everything, and the Mars in Aquarius too is just hard. It takes concerted effort, I think, to like nail anything down right now. It's like you really gotta like hover over something and be very direct with your focus, because it's very easy for things to just kind of like scatter and like go all over the place just because everything's so weird and weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, of course, so in March, we go into Aries season, of course, towards the end of March, and we're still in the beginning. So we're just, it is that. But I agree. Mars is kind of a troublemaker in this month. A troublemaker. Well, making it, I'm not going to jump ahead of ourselves, but it does make an intense square to Uranus. And whenever I'm looking at Mars and Uranus making a square, I think of things going kaboom, like really on a big level. And that happens in just a couple days. But Mars is definitely not making things easier for us having these intense energies with the outer planets like that. But before we get into that, we can talk about tomorrow, which is Mercury conjunct Neptune. That also doesn't help the mix. Mercury and Neptune, like, what does it do to our brain? Mr. Pisces over here.
Right. So I have Mercury in Pisces actually, and Neptune's very close to being on my sun at this point. So yeah, so Mercury conjunct Neptune is like you do not want to be like doing your income taxes or anything that requires intricate thought or whatever. Just with all these energies kind of being all over the place, it's much better for like intuitive thinking or so here's a couple of my tips that I use to circumnavigate things. So when I see like Mercury Neptune conjunctions, Mars Uranus squares, things like that, like I try to plan things very lightly for the days around those things, because I know that like things are going to tend to go wonky and there's going to be added delays, dysfunctional type things not going as planned. So I try to allow some extra space to get things done and just kind of I have a bad habit of trying to like cram something into every single second of the day. A lot of times I try not to do that. I try to just focus on the big things and make sure I get the most important things done, and then anything after that is like an added bonus. And then just like when the moon's in Capricorn, then you can double up on the stuff you have to do. But yeah, Mercury conjunct Neptune is I can't remember the exact phrase we've used before. Pink fluffy clouds, I think, is what something to that effect. There's not a lot of reality to anything. It's very
get your
very
mind
out there.
like kind of, yeah. And you know what might be good, of course, analytical stuff like taxes is not the not the ideal thing
Right.
to do. And then, you know, the following day, this exacts the Mars Uranus exacts, but the Mercury conjunct Neptune, it gives the pink fuzzy clouds. But if you want to do something and you feel compelled to actively doing something, maybe something creative writing aside from, you know, analytical writing, if you feel so inclined, you know, you might not even painting, doing something that it activates, I can't remember if it's the right or the left brain, but the side of your brain that is creative, that would be fun. And that would be something that you could actually be inspired by, I would think, right? Because of Neptune can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the without getting too conspiratorial here, I think your brain has two alters. So like one side is ruled by Virgo, one side is ruled by Pisces, and it's like the Virgo side is where is your analytical, detail oriented, attention to detail. Neptune is your, you know, the big picture side, and that's the creative side. And so you can probably pick out people, you know, just from that, you know, whether they're left brain or, you know, Pisces brain or Virgo brain. You know, I think probably when you can get the two to talk to each other, that's the biggest strength you can have, and you can get them to cooperate. I try to like visually flip back and forth from whatever I need or whatever the energy is on that day, because you can really get. So one of my Pisces tricks is, I'm not always good at detail oriented stuff. I can be. I can flip on I've got the Uranus Pluto conjunction in Virgo, so I've got that side of me that I can do that if I need to. But when I know like the Pisces energy is heavy, I can focus intently on one thing. So I try to pick like a bigger project or something that I need to completely morph myself into, and just like immerse myself in something and like become that for a little while. And that's kind of like how I learn and figure things out anyways, because like I didn't go to college. I was fine in high school, you know, whatever, but like I'm much better at like seeing something and, you know, immersing myself in it, and then I can mimic it and then make improvements, you know, flip into the Virgo energy and make improvements on it after that.
When the moon's in Capricorn.
Yeah.
Right.
But initially when I find something, like I have to like do the Pisces deep dive and just like, you know, become that thing that I want to learn for a short period of time or longer period of time, depending on the topic. But
that's really great advice, because, you know, sometimes we fight against what the energies that are going on because we just want to get something done. We just want to accomplish something. You know, my native Capricorn moon is like, hey, I want to have this, so I'm going to do it whether or not it's the best time for it. But, you know, even the Bible says to us, there's a time for everything, you know, time to focus in and a time to not. So, you know, not to get religious, but I definitely agree with that sentiment for sure, because we do have different times when things are more on point or more in peak season, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. And
so like planetary alignment. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead. Well, I was just saying with these specific things that are going on in the sky, and, you know, of course, your own chart does matter, and it does, you know, it will reflect in one way or another, but this is more of a collective thing. However, collectively, if it's not you dealing with this, going through this, etc., it's your friend or your partner or your, you know, relationship. So you're going to have to likely have some contact or dealing with somebody dealing with a situation. So I think that's a key thing about looking at the mundane astrology, is knowing it's not just you, it's collective.
Right. And two, with like some of the like daily posts and stuff we both make, like if a transit we talk about is like hitting directly in your chart, that's obviously going to be a big thing. But if there's a big aspect and it's not hitting in your chart, you'll still, like you said, coworkers, partners, roommates, whatever, you'll still be interacting with that on some level, even if it's not hitting in your chart. If it is hitting in your chart, then that's obvious. These transits are going to be big deals if it's hitting exact in your chart.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think that's an important part to it too. So just kind of keeping in the back of your mind, because astrology is definitely, you could look at it from a personal perspective or a collective perspective, even a perspective of an entity such as the United States government or whatever, business, whatever. But there's different lenses in which you can look through it. Obviously, I'm a vibrational astrologer. Before we started recording, Mark and I were talking a little bit about that. And vibrational astrology is one lens looking at it. I know Mark studied a lot of evolutionary astrology is another lens, just modern archetypal astrology, just different ways to look at it and to understand it. It's not that they don't mesh, because they do. It's just from the different perspectives. I love this quote too, and I put it on my Facebook. But it was basically saying, it was by Thich Nhat Hanh, and he had basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but no perspective is right, because he didn't use air quotes, but I am. So no perspective is right. It's just looking at it from a different perspective. So if my perspective is one way, Mark's perspective is another way, then you're getting the knowledge of each one of those perspectives. It's just gathering information, and so I love that, because it really speaks to astrology as a whole. It speaks to just humans as a whole too. We all have our different ways, but if we open ourselves to look at all the perspectives, we can see things more in its entirety than just from one narrow viewpoint. There you go. I'll get off my soapbox. Very Mercury conjunct Neptune-esque of me. Okay, so on the 9th, so that was on the 8th. That exacts on the 8th. Mercury moves pretty quick, so he's not going to be really conjunct Neptune for but a few days. I would say it's definitely starting already today, because it's the day before. But it moves on in a couple days. But on the 9th, Mars moves a little bit slower. So we've been feeling this for the last couple days. Mars makes a square to Uranus, and Mars is in Aquarius, Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus. So what is your take on Mars and Uranus, Mars Square Uranus?
Yeah, so that's probably one of the more explosive aspects you would get out of, and too, just from like the kind of the base level archetypal, like Taurus is very slow moving and stubborn in its own way, but like it likes to finish things, but it does it in its own time frame and its own, I'll do it when I'm going to do it, damn it. I mean, that's kind of Mars that's kind of the Taurus energy. And Aquarius is more kind of all over the place, going to kind of hit things from different angles and, spur of the moment, thoughts outside the box and things like that. So when those two, just Mars square Uranus in any, regardless of the signs, are going to be, very explosive, reactive, quick changes of fortunes, that kind of thing. And with those both being, in fixed signs, there's kind of this battle of, what's a cheesy movie? Speed. Like the bus is moving really fast and you're trying to keep it on the road, and it's like things accelerating at a faster rate than is comfortable, really. But you're trying to keep things on the road and make sure you catch all the big stuff. Again, this is going to be one of those allow for extra time that you normally would for whatever you have planned for like this weekend. Certainly the weekend, probably a little bit more than that, but definitely allow yourself extra time to make adjustments. And I'm sure we'll have our, earthquakes and explosions and other things that we normally get with Mars Uranus squares. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, it just is an intense buildup of things that can sporadically just, like, what the idea of a volcano just venting a little bit is what I get when I think about Mars and Uranus making a square. And squares themselves have a bit of a bit more maybe intensity, I would say, than, of course, than like a trine or a sextile. But even then a conjunction, the conjunction is like them maybe working a little better or easier together than a square. There seems to be more tension or more oomph, if you will. So when this happens, this is this potential for, just doing something where you didn't think twice about it. So suggestions would definitely be things like keeping yourself, give yourself that moment, that split second to think about things, before you actually do them, so that you make sure that you're not making a mistake in that. So yeah. And temperaments, of course, that's important too.
yeah, it's too, like with even looking at the Mercury Neptune conjunction with the Mars Uranus square, like, there's sometimes you have to make quick judgments on things, but like when I like sometimes you can be like out of your body, but you're aware that you're out of your body or that you're not thinking properly. And so that's another time when I try to like build in some extra time when I have to do stuff or make decisions or act on something. Like if I know that I'm not thinking properly, then I run it through my head once and then like sleep on it or let it sit for a couple days till there's a more stable transit before. Now sometimes you have to you have to kind of start thinking about stuff a few days beforehand to make sure you have a good transit to do stuff. But I think even being astrologers, we can see times when we're not thinking clearly. And I just try to avoid making big decisions at a time when I'm like aware, like, Neptune's on my sun, or, I probably shouldn't make a big decision today, or, or I shouldn't act on one thing because like I know that I'm in this other place, but that doesn't mean that you can necessarily correct your thinking at that point, even though, sometimes you have to say like, you know what, I'm not thinking on this level today. Let me try and pad some time in there before I have to make a call on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely helpful. I mean, we can't always do it and we have to act in the moment, but thinking about it and giving yourself a break, if at all possible, is definitely going to help you out and during these transits when maybe you don't feel as clear. On the same day, we have a couple of other things that are going on. So this Mars Square Uranus exacts at 5:55 p.m. Eastern time. By the way, all of our times are Eastern time because that's where Mark and I live, in the Eastern time. And so on the 9th, we have the sun making a sextile to Uranus as well. This happens at 6:01 p.m. So we have Mars square Uranus, sun sextile Uranus, really close to each other. And the sun is in Pisces, of course, and Uranus is in Taurus. This would generally, I would think, would be not, be more like a high energy kind of thing, but because of the Mars also conjuncting Uranus, maybe it can be translated into frustration if you're not like in the space of high energy, or other people around you might be a little frustrated. The sun gives it just a little bit more of a lens to focus, I should say. What are you thinking about the sun sextile Uranus?
Yeah, that's interesting there. That's like, those are exact 6 minutes apart. So like, that's really one. So to me, that's kind of like Mars square Uranus is a disruption, and then sun sextile Uranus is making a quick decision to fix whatever the problem is. So yeah, so Sun and Mars both making aspects to Uranus that fast. It's definitely, I'd say definitely high energy all day on Saturday. And we're also at that point, Mercury is at 29 degrees of Pisces also at that point. And yeah, and Mercury is still conjunct Neptune at that point also, it's just a couple degrees past. So that's really a lot of like high strange energy with multiple Neptune and Uranus aspects like at the same time. It's a lot of strange.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think sometimes the Pisces energy can be a lot of in the underwater. You're like swimming around and you're not sure exactly where you're going, and like it might be a little dark outside of the circle where you can see, but there's you're just still going, but you're not sure. The water can get murky, so to speak. It's like a metaphor there. But yeah, I agree, and that's hopefully the Sun sextile Uranus can give you maybe some clarity, even though Pisces can be a little bit murky sometimes. Also on that day, and this happens a little bit later, 11:03 p.m., Mercury moves into the sign of Aries. So this is actually, all this is happening on your sun, right, Mark? Because your sun is at 29 degrees of Pisces. So you're getting all these planets crossing over your sun. I just thought of that.
Yeah. And I get Neptune and Saturn on my sun in like mid this year through early 2026. So I've been looking at this time period for about 8 or 9 years, wondering, trying to put pieces together as to what exactly is going to happen. So yeah, yeah.
So I have a question on that. Have you found the cave that you're going to dwell in and do your hermity kind of like, thing so people can come and talk to you while you're doing your whole mystical hermit seeking self in the cave?
Yes, I've got some nice cave front property picked out in the Appalachian Mountains that I'll be, and then I'll spend my evenings out haunting a bog, perhaps, scaring children, that kind of thing.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, I always think of Saturn, Neptune, that's the spiritual seeker, and they can be either crazy or genius or probably both. So, this sounds like an exciting time ahead for you.
I might be both.
Hey, you know what? Balance.
Right. Yeah.
Balance. That's funny. So what are you thinking
about?
In
the eye of the storm, for certain.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So what are you feeling about Mercury moving into Aries after all this Piscean stuff going on? And all this fixed energy going on? We're moving into a cardinal sign while Mercury is. What are you feeling like? Will that change our mindset on some level in some way?
Yeah. So Pisces is one of those signs that like the energy is so radically different that like for the last few weeks and the next few weeks coming up, there's going to be a lot of things moving from Aquarius to Pisces and Pisces to Aries. And so like Pisces, I think for most people, Pisces is just kind of a dead end where you're just kind of thrown into the abyss. So that Aquarius energy is so kind of like quirky and chaotic that when something leaves Aquarius and enters Pisces, it's like your foot slipping off the gas pedal. It's like you're just kind of spun into this other universe for how long, depending on how long the transit for that planet is. And then two, then you come back like after you do the Pisces deep dive, then you come back up and it's Aries. It's like the 0 to 100 miles per hour in 2 seconds. It's like things radically pick up. And sometimes we've got, like, when we started March, we had a big lineup of Sun, Mercury, and Saturn all together in early Pisces, and then Neptune was in Pisces also. But we're going to start, things are going to start slowly moving into Aries here. So Mercury's the first one. And so that's like when you're driving through rain or a fog bank and then you come out, like it suddenly gets like clear again. That's kind of like how I see that, is like after all the rummaging around in the back of your head, then at least mentally you're focused to go forward and start implementing some of the changes and some of the things you came up with while Mercury was in Pisces. So it's kind of a sudden, jerky lunge forward when something leaves
Yes.
enters Aries.
Yes. And that's the thing, of Pisces does have that way of making things a little bit in the fog, the pink fluffy clouds that we coined like way back when Neptune went into Pisces. But yeah, it hopefully that will bring a little bit of mental clarity, and maybe not to your energy as much, because Mars is still, I think at that time, still in Aquarius, not quite moved into Pisces. That may not help your energy, but mentally, because Mercury is all about our mind, our thoughts, our communication. That might help.
Yeah, Mercury and Aries can at least sort through some of the fog and start getting some clear ideas on things.
Yeah. And then on the 10th, Mercury makes a sextile to Pluto, because Pluto's in the very beginning of Aquarius at 6:20 p.m. That's Aries and Aquarius. So Mercury's in Aries and Aquarius. This might give some compulsive thought processes to the mind. Make sure you just, you're compulsing about the things that you really want to create, like not on things that don't work, aren't working for you, aren't good for you, etc. What are you feeling about the Mercury coming to make a sextile to Pluto?
Yeah, so with Mercury in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius, I mean, to me, that's where your brain can function enough to kind of make some decisions. Although I will say that the Mercury Pluto exact sextile was during a moon void of course period, so maybe like not exactly at that minute, but that should start providing some clarity and some impulse to make moves forward and things like that. So any kind of meeting of Aries and Aquarius is going to be like kind of like quick decision making. There is a new moon earlier that day, and the moon is conjunct Neptune also earlier that day. So that there's a lot of, there's actually like a moon Sun Neptune stellium essentially on that day. So
I missed the new moon. Yeah,
the thinking is still kind of cloudy at that point. So hopefully the Mercury Pluto sextile is like the beginning of like being able to put some plans in action and to move forward. But it's still pretty foggy at that point.
yeah. And the new moon, what time does the new moon happen? Because I actually didn't have that written down.
That's at 5 a.m.
So so it happens 5 a.m. on the 10th.
Yeah, and then the moon Neptune conjunction is at 3:45 p.m. and then the moon goes void of course for another one of these kind of longish void of courses. It's like 4.5 hours.
And
So
then
then
yeah.
then we've got like the moon and Mercury start meeting, you know, close together in Aries after that.
Yeah. And that is more clarity to the mind. Back to the new moon. Is there
Yeah.
something specific that you do during new moons? Is there any, suggestions that you have for people during new moons? Is there
I'm trying. So I personally have found that new moons almost always underperform unless there's like something like, even if there's something wild going on, like conjunct the new moon or anything. I've kind of found that the new moons are much more like looking at things and forming game plans more so than actual taking actions, because that's, you know, the new moon is actually, that's the dark of the moon. That's when there's the least amount of light on things. And with it being in Pisces, you know, multiply that times a million. Um, so I kind of find that I tend not to do things on new moons too much. It's more, uh, it just always seems to feel very low energy, regardless of what sign the new moon is in. So I think it's, for me, the new moons are more of like a formulative stage of like, you know, letting new ideas and thought processes come in. But like, I find that the energy is usually so low on the new moons that like I don't really put things in place very much. I tend to uh, wait until there's some lineups with a little bit more energy to it.
yeah,
Although,
that
well, once we get into that evening, since the new moon is so early, once you get into that evening, then you've got, you know, the moon is direct in Aries and Mercury's in Aries, and they'll both be, you know, forming a sextile to Pluto. So I just have found the new moons to be very lackluster most of the time.
yeah, it's almost a like a chalkboard with no writing on it. It's a start, it's like this,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
the black
Yes.
chalkboard for old school chalkboards, and then just nobody's written on it yet. You're gonna start. This is gonna be your new clean slate, so to speak. So yeah, I agree with that. The moon, especially in Pisces, that it's like the reset. The end of Pisces, beginning of Aries is the start of the astrological new year. When the sun moves from Aries to Pisces, or Pisces to Aries, that is the beginning of it, which we'll get to in this month.
Yeah.
But
I've got some things to say about that too.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do, because your sun is that very last bit of Pisces too. So it's interesting, but it's like a reset, and the new moon is kind of like saying, "Here we go, we're starting this," and that's the Pisces new moon, of course. So cool. So let's move on. We're going to see, okay, on the 11th, we do have, so that would be the 11th is on a Monday. So Monday, we start off Venus entering into Pisces. So we have Venus meeting Mercury into Pisces. That happens at 5:50 p.m. Yeah, so Venus moving into Pisces. I think it's a little bit less weird. And when he's in Aquarius, I speak as a Venus Aquarius native. I would know this. What are you feeling about Venus into Pisces?
Yeah, so that's, anything going into Pisces is like, it's slowing down speed, and like you're driving into the fall. You know, Aquarius to Pisces is driving really fast into the fog bank, and there's kind of that initial kind of like there's always like a lot of activity during Aquarius season with like everything. And then that entrance into Pisces is kind of, you're gonna kind of stop and think about, activities and things you've put into play and everything. It's like the Pisces is kind of a timeout zone to like kind of formulate ideas and plans and figure out like uh, you know put some creativity and imagination into things, and where you need to be outside of the box and listen to your own intuition and things like that. It's Pisces energy is weird. Pisces and Aquarius are the two strangest signs. Maybe that's why
I think I agree with that completely, but I think maybe Venus is a little happier in Pisces than it is in Aquarius, because Aquarius Venus. So when I think about this, just a native with Aquarius and Venus is like, I love you, but I don't necessarily want you around me. It's
right,
kind of like, I love you and
right,
I want your attention, but if you're around me too much, you're going to get on my nerves. It's like there's a
right.
weirdness about. So the distance is beautiful, but because I think that the Venus Aquarius energy is about, loving the self, doing what's there. Yes, there's a collectiveness about it, but it's also, don't hold me down to something. And Venus wants to attach. They want to connect with, the Venus energy wants to connect. That's the attachment to beauty. But I feel like, the Aquarius makes it a little weird, but when it moves into Pisces, it's more like, okay, I'm ready to absorb the rest, the rest of the world into my own little sphere. So I think it's a little easier, but I agree with you. It's definitely not direct like it would be when it was Venus and Aries. It is definitely not direct in that sense, but it's more relaxed, open, welcoming, I guess
Venus,
would be a word.
right. Venus and Pisces is very idealistic. That's where
Yeah.
we look at our ideas of love, relationships, personal values, morals, that kind of thing, and we look at what our ideals and concepts about those things are, and let them ferment. And then when like Venus moves into Aries, like 3 weeks or whatever after this, then that's a time to like move forward on the next level. But it's like, yeah, Venus and Pisces is going to be very idealistic and think in larger concepts and thoughts and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, I know when I'm not going to call anything out by name, but we just had a Venus Mars conjunction in Aquarius, and I saw all these places about all this just like overly fluffy stuff about Venus Mars conjunctions, and I have to say that's not in any way, shape, or form my experience whatsoever, even a little bit, out of Venus Mars conjunctions. It tends to be you fight with the person that you love, you're angry at the person you have feelings towards. And this has been my entire life since I've been following astrology. I've noticed this. You have to be an ascended master to be really good at the Venus Mars conjunctions. The average person does not handle those well, and I can't quite figure out where the overly fluffiness about Venus Mars conjunctions comes from, because I do not see it at all in any personal experiences I've had. You've really, really got to be a master to handle that aspect.
I mean, especially this time around, because it was a few degrees away from Pluto too when it happened. So that lends
Yeah.
a compulsive thing to it. And I agree with you. The Venus Mars, I mean, I think people think archetypally Venus is the goddess of beauty, Mars is the goddess of the god of war. However, the goddess of beauty and war, like, hello, you know, like the male and female. Okay, you got to think, stop, get off the cloud and think reality too. So yeah, I agree with that completely. And it's not easy.
Yeah, and two, I think
it's like
remember.
Almost like,
go ahead. I think there's a delay.
It's almost like an opportunity to work through the shit. You know, like it's like you get the chance to do that. But yeah.
Absolutely. And two, just to, like a heads up on like any show or post or anything we make, the innermost planet never tells the outermost planet what to do. You know, Mars moves slower than Venus, so Mars is at a spot for a longer time. So Venus is going to ask Mars to do something. Mars is going to be dictating to Venus. So a Venus-Mars conjunction is not a 50-50 relationship. That's Venus asking Mars nicely to do something. And and especially, those two planets are next to each other. The transit time isn't radically different. It's like Mars takes like 2 days to move a degree. Venus is about a day to move a degree. So it's not, Mars isn't that much further out than Venus. But like when you talk about like, Mercury, Neptune or something like that, like Mercury's never going to dictate to Neptune what to do. Because Mercury's into the next sign, and Neptune's still at the same degree where the conjunction was. Neptune will stay in a degree for up to a month sometimes. So if it's around a station, it'll stay there for 2 or 3 months, and Mercury's been through 3 signs by then. So when you're looking at any beginning astrologers or whatever out there, when you see a transit, the outer planet is the boss, and the inner planet is the asking the outer planet to do something. It's the outer planet is going to be dictating to the inner planet like how it's going to roll. Because hopefully the inner planet softens up the outer planet a little bit.
That's a really good point to make. And I think sometimes maybe because I'm used to astrology, I think we do this to ourselves when we get like used to it, we forget not everybody has that brain. So that was a really good, reminder to people that, the outer planet is the one that's really calling the shots. So yeah. And that's true of transits. If the transit, well, obviously there's only one if it's transiting, but the transits for the outer planets move so much slower. So they will affect you hitting a natal planet so much longer than if it was Mercury just moving across something in your chart. But those outer planets, those are more, when you get to Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, those are seasonal things. I like to think of them like that. And you even talk about generational, with where each ones are, each one of the outer planets in a certain type of, area for a while, that becomes a generation. And when you look at the generations, you can see where that really does work. So very interesting. So, okay, where are we at? We are at Venus moving into Pisces. So that was on the 11th. And then we skip ahead, unless I'm missing something. The 17th, the sun comes to Neptune. Did I miss one? I don't know if I did.
No, it's pretty much from the 11th until we get to the 17th is pretty much
a chill.
Just like moon aspects.
Yeah.
14 hours to go through.
Yeah, moon aspects, we don't talk about them because honestly, moon aspects, they last a couple hours. You might be sleeping. It's like that big. I mean, you might have the moon is the mood for a reason, and that, that makes sense. So yeah, moving on to the 17th, which happens to be St. Patrick's Day. It also happens to be Sunday. So we have the sun conjunct Neptune. And what degree does this happen in?
That should be 27. Let me do it. I must have left it off there. Let's see.
That's okay. I can pull it up really quick. Find the time of the aspect. It is, yeah,
27, almost 27 and a half.
Yeah. So this is the very ending of Pisces. Neptune and the sun. So, okay. And it does actually, so that's interesting too. Making that square to Mars as well. Do you have that as well? Oh, I'm in the wrong year. Sorry. Never mind. That last little bit, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, how did that happen? Where did Mars come from? Yeah, it's 27 degrees.
Yeah, there is a Sun Neptune conjunction on the 17th.
Yeah, there is a Sun Neptune on the 17th. It's just yeah. So what are you feeling about the Sun Neptune on the 17th? That does happen at 7:22 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, and Venus or the moon has just entered Cancer a couple hours before that. So like there's like extra, and Venus is still in Pisces at that point, and Saturn's in Pisces. So there's really a lot of water. And so those days with like the Sun Neptune, so there's one Sun Neptune conjunction every year. And so the sun will hit Neptune, and same thing with the outer planets. There'll be one day every year where the sun makes a conjunction to the outer planets, to each of the outer planets. So yeah, the Sun Neptune is going to be very foggy. And I would maybe make note of this also, because these sun and moon conjunct Neptunes are going to really come into play from now until early 2026, because with Neptune and Saturn being in Pisces, will start moving up towards a conjunction to Neptune. Like once we get late this year, it'll kind of be an orb there. But there's heavy concentration of energy on like the last 2 degrees of Pisces, first degree or 2 of Aries, from now until 2026, that there's always going to be something in that space, because Neptune's there now. Saturn's going to be up there once we get into next year. The nodes are going to move into Pisces next year. So we're going to have really big, gigantic lineups of, because like Pisces season 2025, like we're going to have like 5, 6, 7 planets and heavenly bodies in Pisces at times at the very end there. So this is kind of micro versions of the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is going to be our biggest planetary aspect over the next like 2 years. Saturn, they're exactly conjunct, I think, at 0 Aries next year. But now up through early 2026, there's just a heavy focus of energy from 28 Pisces to 1-2 degrees Aries. And it's just going to keep, it's there to point things out to you, because that is a reset, a switch over when things move from the very end of the zodiac to the beginning of the zodiac. 0 Aries being the rebirthing process. So this is going to be, I would pay attention to like the Sun Neptune conjunctions and things like that, because they're going to get heavier and bigger and more intense the next 2 years as like additional planets move in there. It's going to be a very heavy spot. But anyways, before my tangent there, that's going to be that's a lot of water. Sun in Pisces, moon in Cancer, Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So that's probably a very poor day for St. Patrick's Day. I would say the alcohol consumption will probably be at an all-time high. There's very little. One of the issues Pisces has is boundary settings. Like in general, like, Pisces are not good friends to have. Like if you're on a diet or you're trying to quit drinking or you're trying to be in your body or things like that. Like Pisces is not always the best influence for staying in your 3D body and not over sweets. Another Pisces fault. It's Pisces is very susceptible to those kind of things. And with the moon in Cancer, another water sign, is probably I predict alcohol sales will be at an extreme high that day. Not just because it's St. Patrick's Day. I think it'll be above the norm even.
Yeah. And that it's so, I guess the suggestion on that one is just, monitor yourself. Remind yourself to monitor yourself before doing whatever drinking or partying you're going to be doing that day.
I'm watching. Yeah. Behave yourselves.
Yeah. Mark is watching. He's Big Brother's over here.
I'm always watching, but so am I.
Big Brother's in the corner.
Big Brother.
I feel him. He's there.
Is Big Brother in the room with us right now?
I think so. He's right there. Right? You see him right in the camera?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so true too. I mean, they're stalking us 24/7 nowadays. That's for sure. What was I looking up? There was something I looked up. I was talking to my sister-in-law yesterday, and I said something. I don't remember the topic off the top of my head, but it was something I hadn't looked up or anything like that. And as I'm sitting there talking to her, I had went to show her something on my Instagram, and of course it pops up. It's an ad about that thing that we had just had a verbal conversation about. I was like, look, see, I'm gonna get, and we were just laughing because we know they're listening. They know.
Oh, yeah.
It's not, a fallacy. And we've all had experiences like that, where, I didn't even type it in. I just had that thought and it pops up. The algorithm knows. It kind of gets into your brain in some way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just a question for people. Like if Alexa or Siri or any of the other helpful, listening devices, if they're ever off, how can you tell it to turn on? Like if it's not already listening.
That's a good point.
Those devices are never off. You
just
think that they're off.
Yeah, I mean,
the device is off, the more hear you say turn on. Or
I have a really crazy theory that I'll share with you here. Remember how we used to be able to take batteries out of our phones?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? So I used to be the dork that would have batteries that I would carry with me instead of plugging my phone in when I would go places and stuff. So I'd have 2 or 3 batteries, and I didn't use it for any other reason. But now we can't do that. You have to buy a battery and plug it in, and do it that way, like a little battery pack that you could plug in. That's how I do it. But my theory is that the phone, when it's on, even when it's not connected or whatever, it's still there. Now I wonder, well, that's my theory, but now I wonder, are they not removing the batteries because they're not letting the entire phone turn off? Is there something going on there that they're continually listening even when you think the phone is off? That has gone through my brain, and I've wondered, is there ever really a time when you're not being seen? Another weird thing that I learned, they sent me a message because they sent me a thing in the mail. They look through everybody's home just to make sure property is, you didn't build on some kind of crazy thing to your property or whatever. This is just the city I live in. They told me in the mail that I got that they used a drone to look at my property. I was like, what, really? Like, but they said it's like, oh, this is normal to look, make sure the property was not, I didn't have anybody buried in the back, I guess. I don't know. Now I'm going to really be in trouble for saying that. But yeah, like, so that's their normal thing. We just did a normal check with a drone on your property. Because normally they had someone come over every year. They'd knock and be like, let us in the backyard. They just walk around. That's just like where in my neighborhood, that's what they did. But yeah, now they're using drones. But the drones, when did that happen and where was I? And you know what I mean? It's like they're everywhere. And I'm not paranoid by saying that. It's just, I think, a reality that we live in.
No, we got a notice in the mail this week wanting to know if we'd made any additions or improvements to the inside of the house over the last couple of years. I'm like, what would I tell you if we did? Why would I tell you if we did? Like, right. Like if we've built an additional house on the property, like I get it, but like, yeah. No, they've already.
Yeah. And from my understanding of where I live in the city I live, even if you do something like change the kitchen cabinets out, they want a permit for that, which to me is madness, but whatever.
Right.
It's just crazy. It's like
a way to fabricate additional income.
Yep, that's exactly it. Anyway, before we get arrested now, we can move on. Okay. On the 18th, we have Mercury conjunct the North Node at 8:12 p.m. So Mr. Nodes over here, Mercury and the nodes. What are you feeling about this?
So anything hitting the North Node is like a movie preview for the future. So to me, Mercury conjunct the North Node is, you getting a glimpse or an idea of something you want or something you want to pursue, or you see a place you'd like to live or a company you'd like to work for or something like that. Things don't always happen when things hit the nodes, but you get an insight of it. I don't necessarily act on things when they hit the North Node, but I do, acutely pay attention to what's going on. I know that I'm going to get some kind of, sign or message or something from the universe about what's coming, or, future movie attractions.
So maybe even, journaling something down if you get insights or something like that might be a good idea. Very cool.
Yep.
Okay, yep. I'll have to remember that, the 18th. All right. And then on the 19th, the sun moves into Aries. So joining Mercury, which already moved into Aries, and it's been in Aries for a little bit now. So sun moving into Aries. That's the 18th happens to be International Astrology Day, right? Oh, nope, sorry, it's the 19th. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. The 19th. Yeah, I don't know why I said the 18th. Yep. Yeah. It's the start of our new year in the tropical zodiac. Yeah. So we use a tropical zodiac goes by the seasons. So that's the beginning of the spring.
Yeah, and I personally use that as, to me, that's the new year for me, because that's when I do not understand astrologers that use like January 1st as like the new year. I do not understand it. It's like Pisces is the end of the zodiac, Aries is the beginning of the zodiac, the 0 Aries is the beginning of the new year. And that's why people's New Year's resolutions don't ever work, because they're doing them at the wrong time. There's no I think the sun's usually at like 10 degrees Capricorn or whatever on the new year. I mean, like that is not an indicator of change. So I don't. It's just
Not at
another way
all.
they've bastardized the calendar to keep people off base and not being intuitive by giving them fake dates to follow along to at home.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's just I don't know, it's an arbitrary day in terms of, energetically, and we're starting a new year. We're beginning. If you think about people wanting to spring clean, obviously this is the northern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere, they're starting their fall, but either way, it's a beginning start, because Aries is the first day of that tropical zodiac that we use when we do astrology. We're not sidereal astrologers, but this is how we calculate it, and it's always this time of year that it happens. So yay for International Astrology Day. So moving on to the 20th. Well, did you mention what you feel about Sun entering Aries? What that might give us energetically? I just thought about that. We didn't really talk about that.
Yeah, no, I just started babbling.
That's normal. Okay.
Yeah, so the Sun entering, that's another one of those dates that's a big jump up in energy from, when things are going through Pisces, which rules the 12th house. That's, rummaging around in your subconscious, trying to find things that are still of use. And then when the Sun enters Aries, or you can do that with any planet, when something leaves Pisces and enters Aries, that's a time, that's a birthing period. That's a new birth. It's the start of a new cycle. That's a time to bring things out that you've found a value in rummaging through your head and bringing it out into the world. So that's one of those, going from 0 to 100 miles per hour in like 5 seconds. It's a big uptick in energy, like as soon as like the Sun enters Aries. So again,
it's the birth
year.
It's the birth. It's the beginning.
A dead horse.
It is the beginning. It is the beginning of things to come, to change, to grow, to start, to move forward. Aries is headstrong in that it kind of wants to march to the beat of its own drum, not really caring about so much about the others. It's more like, this is what I want, and directness to it. So that is actually a hopeful change from the Pisces energy, which seems to be directionless, to more direct energy, which is with Aries.
Yes.
And then we move on. Yep. To the 20th, Mercury comes to conjunct Chiron, which is already in Aries. And this is 18 Aries moving to 18. Is that 18 degrees Aries? No. I think I made a mistake on that one. In terms of the degree, Mercury conjunct Chiron on the 20th. Let me see if that's correct.
I think Mercury is conjunct Chiron.
Yeah, my mistake. I don't know. I just had a brain meltdown there for a second. I'm thinking the Sun conjunct Chiron. I'm like, how can that be? The Sun just moved. But anyway, don't listen to what's internally in my brain. Listen to what comes out of my mouth. So yeah, Mercury does conjunct Chiron. Chiron, what are you feeling about that? There's like, I had my Chiron return recently. So, the Chiron energy is kind of strong in my own chart. Mercury making that conjunction to it. What are you feeling about that with it being in Aries?
Yeah, so I mean, like Chiron is one of those wild cards. It seems like people, like Chiron transits, people either love them or hate them. So
yeah, it does.
And so like it tends to, like, it can either bring up like unhealed wounds or traumas, or it can allow you to do like, great things. Like you can do once in a lifetime things when like you have like really good Chiron transits. You probably ran across that some when you're doing the the baseball analytics and stuff with you see people have like once in a lifetime performances when there's something, hitting their Chiron.
Hitting their Chiron, right? Yeah, that it is. I mean, I know it's only an asteroid, but it does have measurement. You can see what happens. I mean, Chiron is definitely something to look at. And Mercury, maybe it's the mind is also, sorting out which way we can go in terms of, do we want to hold on to difficulty, wounds or so on, or do we want to work through them and the charisma that comes from working through them to let that happen? Mercury is definitely all about the mind. I feel like it's kind of on fire with being in Aries, so it's not slowly thinking, it's not just meandering along, it's going it's moving quickly. So making that connection to Chiron, I think that means something when for us, especially since we're coming from such a Piscean energy. And yes, we still have planets in Pisces at this point, but we're transitioning into the next phase, the new year, if you will, with Aries. Very cool. So as we move on to the month, on the 21st, we have the sun making a sextile to Pluto, and that's sun in Aries and Pluto, of course, in Aquarius at 4:03 p.m. We also have Venus conjunct Saturn on the 21st as well. Venus and Saturn being in Pisces. I actually love Venus and Saturn together. I think it cuts away the crap and it lets you see something that you truly care about. And it's not easy. Saturn is not always typically easy, but it does give you a chance to cut away from what isn't meaningful and give you, understanding of it, and what is meaningful to you. So what are you thinking about the 21st, Mark?
Yeah. So I mean, that's a pretty interesting lineup of, we're really just a day and a half into the new year, Sun sextile Pluto and Venus sextile Saturn. Like, so I mean, to me, that's like a very serious day. I mean, there's a lot of serious energy there, but you can really make some, big improvements. And, it kind of really helps you take stock of actually where everything is at. And really like sort out like what's really important and like make like, meaningful changes. Venus conjunct Saturn is, great time to, starting a new job or, something like that, something that is Saturn oriented where, Venus can. So again, like Venus is going to ask Saturn to do something. Saturn's going to be dictating in that scenario. Same thing with the Sun Pluto sextile, the outer planets, the leader there. But with the Sun and Venus hitting, Pluto and Saturn, that can allow you to make some really positive changes during that time. When you can, you're feeling practical and stable and grounded, you can really make big movements forward at that time.
Yeah, I think that the groundedness and stable are really good words for that, because the sextile with Sun and Pluto, that can be a drive to doing something, an energetic drive to doing something. Aries and Aquarius, the Sun and Pluto in Aries and Aquarius, that's fire and air. So there's a combustibility to it, but you're getting a chance to direct yourself in a way that can hopefully be more in alignment with what you're trying to create for yourself. But there's an energy towards it. I love how you say that. I'm gonna steal that from you. How that Pluto is dictating to the sun and the sun is asking Pluto in that scenario, because it is true. Like the sun isn't saying like, hey, let's shine brightly. It's actually being dictated, so to speak, by Pluto. What Pluto is, and Pluto is that drive, that compulsive drive. And Venus and Saturn, I just love Venus and Saturn because it makes me think of a woman that just got out of the shower and brushed her hair and didn't put any makeup on, and she's beautiful, like without having any makeup on or hair done. And it's just like the beauty in the simplicity. That's what the metaphor that comes to my mind when I think about Venus and Saturn, because there is beauty in all of that. Yes, there's beauty in putting makeup on and making your hair. Maybe not for you, Mark, but like, for women, but there's beauty in that, but there's beauty in the realness. And that's what I love about Venus and Saturn. And I think that's a lovely kind of image to get for Venus and Saturn. But yeah, putting that into context of Venus also not dictating to Saturn, but Saturn saying, okay, Venus, maybe I'll give you what you want.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then we move on. So we move on to the 22nd. The 22nd, Mars goes into the sign of Pisces. It leaves a crazy Aquarius. I get to call Aquarius crazy because I have a stellium in Aquarius. What is up with Mars and Pisces?
Right. So there's all throughout the spring, there's this weird dance of, things moving from Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. And it's the Pisces is the slowest by far of those three energies. So Mars kind of takes a time out and goes to La La Land and focuses on artistic things and music, Pisces is paranormal stuff also, if you're one of the, ghost hunter types or, that kind of thing. I mean, that's prime season, to be delving into that kind of stuff. I mean, so it's probably good we don't have like 7 planets in Aquarius or 7 planets in Pisces or 7 planets in Aries at one time, even though we do have lots of groupings of like 3s and 4s of those. But I think it provides a little bit of balance when you have some of the, 2 or 3 things in Pisces, 2 or 3 things in Aries, so that there's not, it gives you a little bit of the ability to think before you act. Because the Pisces, the Mars and Pisces, you'll see that a lot in the charts of like musicians and things like that, where that energy, even though people say that, Mars is kind of at a detriment, a little bit in Pisces, it's still, there's a whole other world and universe of things for Mars to play with in the sign of Pisces. So it's Mars may be taking a little bit of a break from the 3D energy, but it's still it's very active in Pisces, just a little more like subconsciously than it normally would be in, when it was in Aquarius or when it goes into Aries. So I think that's another word for a key word that I'd like for Pisces is inspiration. Mars and Pisces can help you dig up inspiration or things that make you, root for the underdog or kind of uncork things that make you feel, vibrant and alive and stuff and active in things. But it kind of starts with like the mental part of that. And, we get like whatever 6 or 7 weeks of Mars in Pisces before Mars, enters the sign that it rules, Aries, and to where, things go 100 miles an hour again through that. So that's a good time to, find your spark and your intuition. There's a phrase I've been reading in a book. I can't think of what it is now. It'll come to me at some point. But yeah, it's a good time to find out and seek inspiration that you can convert into energy later on.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, and Mars does stay into Pisces until the end of April. So we do have, like you said, 6 weeks or so of Mars into Pisces. So exploring the different things that maybe are creative or not necessarily the tangible, like you were saying, the 3D world. It's not a bad idea to do that. Like, what do you like to do? And in that sense, putting your energy into that, because Mars is about our energy. Yeah. So very good. So on the 24th, we have Venus in Pisces making a sextile to Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter is getting in the mix here, and this will last a couple of days because Venus sextile Jupiter. Venus isn't moving super fast at this point. So Venus sextile Jupiter, what are you feeling with that one?
I mean that Venus sextile Jupiter. That's feel gooderies. Any kind of Venus Jupiter aspect is usually at least moderately pleasant for the most part. So you may, let's see, what do we got? The moon's in Virgo for about half the day, and then Libra the second half. So I mean that's a good time to indulge yourself in things that you enjoy, and that's what is that? That's Palm Sunday. So I mean that's a pretty good day to be leisurely or do things that you enjoy, just because Venus and Jupiter are normally the two most beneficial planets, and Pisces and Taurus goes very well together. Venus and Pisces, Jupiter and Taurus. So I mean overall that's I'll call that your calm before the storm, because of the.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So I would take the 24th there to relax, because things are gonna
pick up.
Yeah, things pick up.
Yeah,
early the next morning.
Yes, what comes to mind with Venus and Jupiter is like being extra lazy. Just the luxury of life, right. Sitting on the sofa, binge watching TV, if that's what your thing is, like eating some ice cream and just like, because I feel right. Like you were saying, the next morning when we have the full moon lunar eclipse, and that happens at 3 a.m. at 5 degrees Libra, things start to stir again. So that's when the sun and moon are opposite of each other in the sky, of course. That's the full moon. And the eclipse happens. So what are you feeling about the eclipse here? Because you've got to have some interesting opinions here.
Yeah, I have actually not. So usually that the Aries Libra eclipse is usually pretty potent. This one I'm going to say is going to be the side dish or the appetizer to the second one. I think we all know the April 8th eclipse is going to be that's going to be the huge one. There's always some kind of, when things hit that Aries Libra axis, there's usually somewhere where you need to take action and somewhere where you need to set boundaries. because that's kind of the Aries Libra balance. There is action versus, you know, justice or fair play or whatever. So there's usually somewhere where you have to set boundaries and somewhere where you have to take some action. And,
Right.
you know, often not the same place, but that's what I think of with that one. But still, this, even though it's at the full moon, that eclipse really pales in power to the one at the beginning of in early April.
Yeah, it does. And the eclipse early in April is the solar eclipse, and it crosses over the United States, right? That's the, what are they calling it? The Great Eclipse.
It's the second Great American Eclipse, and it
Right,
forms X across the United States compared to the 2017 one. And it goes exactly over my house.
Wow. Wow. Did the first one go over your house, or no, not?
No, yeah, nowhere close. But this one,
yeah.
And this will be the last eclipse to hit here until like 2099 or something like that. I saw.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So the last solar eclipse, the lunar eclipses are a little different because we do see them more.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But the solar eclipse. That's interesting. I remember looking through the eclipses. So I remember when I was little, and I don't remember the dates, but I was little and I was in Michigan at my grandmother's house, and we had a solar eclipse. I had to go back in the years. It was in the 80s though. And my grandmother was like, "Oh, we're having an eclipse and it's going to get dark outside," but it was the middle of the day and I didn't know what the heck that was. And I remember like experiencing it and then going to see it, but like we didn't really like look at it, but you know, knowing that outside was very different looking than what it looked like normally in the middle of the day, you know, because if you're in that path of totality, the sky gets dark, you know. So that's interesting. It's going right over your house. I wonder what that's gonna mean for you. So yeah, I mean, this is a lunar eclipse though. What was that?
I don't want to guess.
You don't want to guess
about what the eclipse going over our house will do.
Right.
Where were we at? Oh yeah. So it's some kind of, you know, the Aries Libra axis usually has to do with taking action and setting boundaries. So it it will be very lively, I'm sure. It will be very lively.
It will be very lively, and it will be interesting to see how it kind of plays out for everybody in that time period. And the other eclipse, the solar eclipse, is April 8th, which we'll do a video for April, and we'll put it out at the end of March. But the interesting part of the April 8th eclipse is that Chiron is also in the same degree as the eclipse. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
yeah,
you know,
Chiron and Mercury and the North Node. There's like there's a 5-planet mashup. Sun, Moon,
wow,
Mercury, Chiron, North Node, all between like 14 and 19 Aries, or somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart. It's really crazy. So it will be a prelude to what's to come. So this lunar eclipse, I mean, it is happening at 5 degrees of Libra. So if you have planets at 5 degrees of Libra, it might be affecting you obviously a little bit more, or even 5 degrees of any sign, it might be affecting you a little bit more than it will be the general, you know, consensus of people. Being that it is the Libra Aries full moon eclipse. I don't know. I feel like when we think about Libra Aries, we are thinking about Libra being the very beginning, the early stages of life, and then by the time we get to Libra, which is halfway around the zodiac, we're connecting our life, ourself with the other side of the realm. You know, we're going on to the next bit of not just discovering the self and the surroundings, which is the first part of the zodiac, but connecting with the things that are around us, whether it be person, place, thing around us. So there is a balance of the two. And I think that's something to kind of think about between this eclipse that happens on the 25th and then the one that happens April 8th. Like, how can you balance yourself with the things that are around you? So that could be something to kind of think about and keep in the back of your mind. That's always a good advice to do, but to do it and intentionally is also another piece of the puzzle that helps, I think, getting yourself in alignment. So that when the eclipses happen, you don't necessarily have a moment of like, oh no, things aren't working correctly, or things are, you know, and you don't know where to go with yourself. You know, I think that the eclipse in April is definitely, like Mark said, is a lot stronger, but you know, it's a prep for yourself, which is good. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting end to the month. The last thing that we have here on this listing of going on in March is Venus sextile Uranus on the 28th. Venus in Pisces, Uranus in Taurus at 9:58 p.m. What are you feeling about that one?
You know, so when you look at Venus sextile aspects, and again, this one is in Pisces and Taurus, just like the Venus Jupiter sextile was. You know, when you have Venus Uranus aspects, you kind of look for like surprise. I look for like surprise gifts, like, you know, you go to your favorite restaurant and they, you know, have your favorite meal on special, or, you know, somebody brings food into work, or, you know, it's some kind of, you know, surprise beneficial. You get money out of somewhere you weren't expecting, you know, some kind of surprise something, you know, somebody hands you down something that you know need unexpectedly, or something like that, like some kind of surprise beneficial gift, you know, when it's a sextile or trine, you know, one of the, you know, better flowing aspects. So again, that's what is it, moon's in Scorpio that day. Yeah, so to me that's kind of like being able to attract something you need, that like comes through like kind of unexpectedly. That's why I look for from the Venus Uranus aspects. And since it's Venus too, it can be like, it doesn't have to be like food or something. It can be like some kind of creature comfort, something, you know. It can be a chair. It's something, you know, it can be something weird, like, because when there's like Uranus involved, it's never what you expect it to be. It's always something like wackadoodle that just like kind of comes out of nowhere. So it can be like, you know, somebody gives you a new office chair, or somebody gives you some plants, or so, you know, that would be a Uranus and Taurus thing. You know, somebody surprises you with a gift of some plants or fruit,
Something.
or, you know, just something, you know, and then it's got to be something weird because it's Uranus, but like, you know, it's like something you like. It's like kind of unexpected, out of nowhere from.
When Venus, I had a Venus Uranus situation, and it was exactly that. You kind of made me reminisce about it, and I remember going back to look. So I had a roommate for a while, and it was after already the world was crazy in 2020, just put it that way. And I was working out in the house and stuff, and I was like, I really want a big mirror to like put, so I can watch myself work out. Although like I usually work out in the park, and I don't have mirrors obviously in the park, but you know, I wanted to make sure my form was right and all this stuff. And I'm like, text my roommate, I'm like, oh, I want a big mirror. I shit you not, he comes home with a mirror that was literally on a wall of a gym, and it's so big, it didn't fit my ceiling. Like, he was like, "Here, I have one for you," and he was like so excited to give it to me. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what is this?" But he's like, "Put it on the wall," so because he knew what I wanted it for, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so funny." So yeah, that was an unexpected gift, and it was surprising that you don't expect someone to pull out a mirror in their back pocket, but he was like, "Oh yeah, I just have this. Happened to pull it off the wall in the place they were remodeling where he works," and I'm like, "This is the funniest thing." So yeah, that's kind of what you would expect. And funny enough, I remember it because it was not just Uranus, which is kind of surprising gifts with Venus. But Venus is also a mirror. You're looking at yourself. The mirror is the whole intention is to look at the self to, be able to work out. And I had to cut it because it just wouldn't fit even in long ways. It was so funny. But yeah, so if you get any mirrors on the 28th, let us know. But that actually is a really, an interesting aspect. So yeah. So that does wind up our month of March in 2024. We do have April will start us off in a fun way, and April is going to be an exciting month. So we'll definitely get to recording the April video and sharing it with you guys before April starts, because there's a lot going on then. Yeah.
April's I don't want to say it's the defining month of the first 10 months of this year, or first 8 months at least, is definitely it might be the defining month of the year, but the fall is its own entity. But
yeah, it'll be interesting. It will be very interesting. And so enjoy March while you can, and prepare yourself, get the bunkers ready and all of that stuff for April.
Yeah. Already done.
I'm kind of kidding. Exactly. Make sure you camouflage them well.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so awesome. Is there anything you want to add as we wrap this up?
No, I think that was a good overview of things.
Cool. All right. So we'll see you guys all next month.
Okay. Sounds good.